Hey guys, and welcome back to the Fantasy Football Profits. Today we're going to go over some waiver wire picks for week 1. Now this is a very weird waiver wire video because you pretty much just had your draft and really not much has changed since then. However, we've still got to go over this for a lot of reasons, and one being a lot of people draft and by the end of the draft they're starting to just pick whoever and they've got dead weight on their bench, and that's the very reason that we're doing this video. Is that, guys, do not leave dead weight on your bench. Do not leave players on your bench that are not talented. You want to absolutely make sure you're getting the most talent possible into your lineup. So that's what this video is for. As always, there'll be timestamps down in the description. You can jump to each position that you want. We're going to talk about some options as well as handcuffs and some guys for this week, but it's going to be a pretty simple and straightforward video. Now, something to note is this video is going to be a lot later, and the start sit this week is a lot later than we're going to do the rest of this season. So from week 2 on, our waiver wire video is going to come out late Sunday night, so most of you are going to see it Monday, Tuesday, and then our start sit is going to come out Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday morning-ish, so somewhat early on Wednesday. Maybe occasionally late Tuesday night, but that's hopefully going to come out early enough most of the weeks for you guys to be able to get those ahead of time and not have to panic, right? We want to get these waiver wires out super early and the start sit out super earlier, so it's not Thursday or Wednesday or whatever. You've got your waiver wire claims to make or your start sits to do, and you're panicking hoping our video comes out on time. We're going to try to get those out much earlier. Our start sit for this week is going to come out on Friday most likely, but again, we're just 1 week behind because it's week 1 of the season. Things have been pretty hectic, but just to let you guys know, that's kind of the way things are going right now. Again, we're going to go by position, and we're going to talk about some options for you guys this week. Hopefully you guys had a good draft. Hopefully you're prepped for this week. I'm so excited for football, excited to watch. I believe Bears-Packers as week 1, going to start us off this Thursday. So that's all that's going on, guys. Let's get cracking. Let's get going. We're going to start talking about the quarterbacks. All right, guys, so one thing I want to say before we get into these quarterbacks is that we're not going to be going over backup quarterbacks you might want to put on your roster, some guys with potential, handcuffs, anything like that. We typically stream our quarterbacks or we get a stud, whatever it may be. And so this is pretty straightforward, although there's not a whole lot to talk about. The first guy that we think that you should consider this week if you're looking for a quarterback to get you through 1 week would be Nick Foles. Now, Nick Foles is 82% available, and I know he plays for the Jaguars in an offense that people just aren't a big fan of. And you know what? I agree with you. I'm not a huge fan of that Jaguars offense, but there is some things to like. First thing, one of the biggest reasons that we put him in this category is that we do like Dede Westbrook and the way they played together in preseason, some practice news that we've heard. Nick Foles has been playing well, and so has Dede Westbrook. It's nice to know that he's performing well in that offense. He's got a good number 1 target. Not an amazing number 1 target, but he can certainly make do. The reason he comes in this list is he's playing against the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Chiefs, they produce fantasy quarterbacks like crazy, and I'm not just talking about Pat Mahomes. I'm talking about the quarterbacks that they play. That is a high-powered offense that's going to, I mean, if anyone's going to put up points this season against any team, it's going to be the Chiefs. That is probably the best offense in the NFL. I mean, I guess you could argue the Saints are a little bit better, but that's a great offense with the best quarterback in the NFL. They're going to put up their points, and yet they don't have a great defense. I don't necessarily think there's going to be a shootout, but they are going to force Nick Foles to throw the ball, and they're going to force the Jacksonville Jaguars to score points if they want to win. Of course, I think almost everyone projects the Chiefs to win this game. But I think Nick Foles is a good option. I don't think he's an amazing option. We've got some better options. He happens to be the most highly available at 82%. A little bit less available at 72% is quarterback Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold did not play amazing his rookie year, but he played really well down the stretch. He had a 3-touchdown game against the Packers. I believe he finished with 6 touchdowns in his last 4 or 5 games, and so the production certainly increased there for Sam Darnold. I like his wide receivers. I think Robbie Anderson is a great wide receiver one to have. He's one of those wideouts that can help your quarterback in a moment's notice. See your quarterback may having a bad day, suddenly a 75-yard touchdown to Robbie Anderson, and hey, you're looking good. He's back on track to have a good game, and so Darnold at 72% available is a good start this week against the Bills. Now, the Bills last season actually allowed one of the least amount of, or mid to least top half as far as least points allowed. And so a lot of people are kind of tricked into believing that that's a good defense. However, the Bills are not a good defense. The reason they don't give up many points is teams don't need to score a lot of points to beat them. That offense was absolutely brutal last season. If I'm not mistaken, Josh Allen threw just 12 touchdown passes. I could be wrong, but I think that was the exact numbers, like 12-7 for his touchdown interception ratio. And so I think Sam Darnold is a good play this week. Of course, him getting Le'Veon Bell, catching balls out of the backfield and in the running game is going to be a huge boost. He had one of the lowest pass rating when it comes to play action passes, and so getting that boost in the run game is going to be huge for him. Moving on to some guys who are less available at 44%, we got Jimmy Garappolo. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Jimmy Garappolo as a quarterback, and he didn't have an absolutely stellar preseason. However, he was a guy who's been touted. He trained a lot with the Patriots, so there's some good things there. We've heard a lot of good news about him in the past. One bad preseason isn't all the news about him. But hey, he plays the Buccaneers, who are the worst defense in the NFL, at least statistically last season. They're an absolutely horrendous defense, and so I think that plays really well into him. He's a good start this week. He's got Dante Pettis. We love Dante Pettis. He's got George Kittle, probably the most talented tight end in the league, even over Kelsey. We've gone over some of those metrics and some of those breakdowns. If you want that information, you go to our tight end rankings video. But Jimmy Garoppolo, not an amazing play this week, but a pretty good play this week. Moving on to another play that we like is Kirk Cousins, bit of a homer pick, but at 38% available, he's got a good matchup week 1. He plays the Atlanta Falcons. Of course, we already know Kirk Cousins. He's got great guys. He's got Kyle Rudolph, who's a mediocre tight end. They draft Irv Smith. Of course, they've got Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs and Dalvin Cook out of the backfield. That is a quarterback's dream, and he's absolutely going to be able to capitalize on that talent when he goes and plays the Falcons. Falcons are a good offense. We talked about the Chiefs. They're a good offense that's going to put up points and force teams to score against them if you want to win, and yet they don't have a very good defense. I'd say they have an average defense, so I'm not bashing them. I don't think they have a bad defense, but that is far from the strong suit of their team, and so Kirk Cousins could definitely have a good week this week. Now, some people are concerned he had a lot of turnovers last season, or he didn't play great in big games. That's not necessarily a concern. For starters, a lot of people play in leagues where turnovers, interceptions, fumbles don't lose you points, so that's not a big deal. Second of all, increases, or I should say improvements to the offensive line and an extra year with a full offensive coordinator the entire offseason and just really a lot of experience, I think bodes really well for Kirk Cousins this season, and especially week 1. But move on, let's talk about the last guy. Let's not waste any time. We'll talk about Mitch Trubisky. He is 30% available, so still somewhat highly available, not extremely available, but he plays the Packers. Now he plays them tomorrow, so this is going to be a pickup you'd have to make pretty quickly. He's a very athletic and mobile quarterback. He's got some experience under him. He's really getting used to his wide receivers, that whole offense, and Matt Nagy. I love that offense. They made an improvement to their running back situation with David Montgomery. Of course, they play the Packers defense, who, like I've said, they're just not a great defense. Packers are not horrible defense, but I think Mitchell Trubisky could certainly have a good week this week and capitalize on a real prime time matchup. So I believe we just talked about 5 quarterbacks. Those are 5 quarterbacks that you should be considering for this week 1. Now we're going to move on to the running backs, the wide receivers, the other positions. We're even going to talk about some handcuffs and guys you could consider to get that dead weight off your bench and to help round out your roster. So the first guy that you should consider has got to be Matt Breida. Now, Matt Breida is only 20% available. That's not highly available, and yet 20% does seem pretty high to me, considering this guy is a PPR stud who was just named the 49ers starting running back. I think that's big news for him that he was named the guy over Tevin Coleman. I think that shows huge confidence that they have in him. And he plays the Buccaneers this week. The Buccaneers are a great team to be playing this week, as last season they finished dead last in run defense. He could definitely capitalize on that situation and have a very good week. Next up, we have Devin Singletary at 29% available. Devin Singletary is a guy you got to put on your roster, not just for this week, but for long term. He's a rookie. He's performed well. He's looked good in preseason. And the Buffalo Bills just let go. They just completely released LeSean McCoy. Tells you exactly how much confidence they have in this guy. Plays the Jets this week. They're a mediocre run defense. I think he could certainly capitalize on that. I love the added year, that added maturity and development of Josh Allen could seriously help that offense quite a bit. I don't think that Devin Singletary is going to be amazing this week, but I think he's going to get probably 15 carries, 15 to 20 touches. Could be a good week. Who knows? Next guy to consider is LeSean McCoy. Now, I think LeSean McCoy was dropped, and that comes out to a lot of people as really bad news. However, I think it is Buffalo in rebuilding mode and getting their rookie running back out there and getting reps. McCoy's 33% available. He plays the Jaguars defense this week. Now that is a tough defense to play. They are a very good run defense. However, you're playing for the most high-powered offense in the NFL, in the Kansas City Chiefs. And, to be honest with you, LeSean McCoy is a guy who, if you're picking up to stream for a week, he only needs to get you 1 touchdown. He only needs to get you 1 yard carry on the goal line to score that touchdown and it'd be worth the start that week. And so that's a very high possibility for McCoy. Damian Williams is a good running back. He's a very good pass-catching back, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if they were using McCoy on the goal line to just finish that off, punch it in the end zone. So that could very well be a start this week if you're desperate at running back. I know I've already gotten 3 or 4 trade offers for people trying to get running backs from me, so people are apparently already getting quite desperate. If you have Kenyon Drake, you should probably handcuff him with Kallen Ballage. Kallen Ballage is 51% available. He is still young. He has shown some signs of talent, although he struggled this offseason. He's not an amazing pickup, but he is a guy to consider. Another guy has got to be Carlos Hyde. I think you got to consider Carlos Hyde, especially if you already have Duke Johnson, and especially if you're in a standard league. Now, in a PPR league, he loses a lot of value, but in a standard league at 67% available. He's a guy you should pick up for the whole season, a guy you should definitely handcuff with Duke Johnson. I think he is a good starter in standard leagues. If you're looking for a flex player, whatever it may be, he's going to be like a guy, just like I talked about with McCoy, going to get a lot of goal line carries, first and second down touches. I don't think he's going to be as good as Duke Johnson. I still think that Duke Johnson is the man, but Carlos Hyde's got some value. If you're desperate at this time, pick him up now while you still can, because I think he could have a good week in the first couple of weeks, score some touchdowns, and I think people are going to start picking him up and he'll go off the waiver wire pretty quickly. However, he does play the Saints defense this week, so week 1 matchup is not lovely, and he still does have to learn the playbook. But again, if you've got dead weight on your bench, pick him up now while you still can. On this topic of handcuffs, because I've mentioned it a couple times now, guys that you should be considering as handcuffs to pick up, put on your roster, has got to be Jaylen Sammuels. If you have Austin Ekeler, Justin Jackson is a guy that you absolutely need to be handcuffing with Austin Ekeler. This is for the reason that Austin Ekeler is a great receiving back, but we have seen time and time again that he cannot handle a full workload in the NFL. Justin Jackson's more of a typical running back. Another guy is Alexander Mattison, the Vikings running back. He's a rookie. He's shown some talent. You got to handcuff Dalvin Cook with Alexander Mattison. Cook is a very talented running back, and when Cook is healthy, he's the guy. But when is he healthy? He has a lot of injury concerns. The last thing that you want is your 2nd or 3rd round pick in Dalvin Cook getting hurt and you not having the backup, not having the guy. Ido Smith is another guy. He's actually fairly highly available. Devonta Freeman is the exact same situation as Dalvin Cook. He's a very good running back. He's an especially good pass-catching back. When he plays, he's amazing, but the injury concerns are a problem. A little bit undersized, just like Cook. Ido Smith is a must-pick-up guy, must-have on your bench. You got to have him to be safe. Giovoni Bernard. We talk about guys who have come in as handcuffs and replaced an injured starter and had a good season at running back position. Giovoni Bernard is one of those backs. He's already done it in the past, and if something happens to Joe Mixon this year, he could very well do it again. And then the final running back handcuff that you guys need to be considering is Jamaal Williams to Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones has set himself apart as the clear number 1 back in that offense, but Jamaal Williams is the handcuff for sure. He's the clear number 2, and he's a guy to be watching and considering, maybe stashing if you've got Jones. Put on your bench and wait and see if something happens to Aaron Jones. Jamaal Williams has a lot of fantasy value. So guys, those are the running backs that you need to be considering. We're not huge on over-handcuffing players, but if you have dead weight on your bench, please don't do that. Please don't waste a roster spot. Put some talent on your bench. Get these guys there and get your roster loaded. Get stacked up. Nothing better than when an injury happens and you're prepped with the backup and you don't need to desperately trade, or when somebody else, his player gets injured and you have their backup. That is great. I love when that happens. So let's move on now, guys, to the wide receivers. All right, guys, so here we are in wide receivers. The first guy we're going to talk about to help you round out your roster is Dante Pettis. And this guy is more of a round out your roster wide receiver and actually a wide receiver 2 or 3. This guy is a starter. I don't know how he is 32% available considering he was named the starter in San Francisco for the 49ers, and he shows some serious talent. His metrics are there. He plays Tampa Bay this week, so that's a great match. We've talked about how awful Tampa Bay is. I'm not going to trash them anymore. This guy should be available in 0 leagues. This guy's got some serious talent. I love this guy. So make sure to pick this guy up if you can. Some other guys to consider at 93% available is Parris Campbell. This guy would be way less available. He'd be picked up way more often if it weren't for the retirement of Andrew Luck. Now, the rookie wide receiver, he's shown a lot of talent, and I think he has a lot of dynasty value. He plays the Chargers this week. I still think that he does have some value. T.Y. Hilton's a good wide receiver, but he's really a deep ball guy. He's really a speedster, a burner, and they need that short option other than their tight end, so there's room for Campbell to grow. He's got a stash on your bench if you're in a dynasty or keeper league, absolutely. Another guy who's young, who's shown some talent, he's really developing from last season, is Michael Gallup at 38% available. Plays the Giants this week, so that's an okay matchup. He didn't play great last season, but he's shown some real development. He's really seemed to improve, and that's huge for an offense that needs a wide receiver to come alongside and to complement Amari Cooper. Michael Gallup might be that guy, though I definitely wouldn't completely bet on it for him to be your starter, but he's definitely worth a bench spot. Another guy, if you're trying to get by, you picked up A.J. Green. You think he's got some talent at the end of the season. He's very valuable, but he's injured right now. For those of you who don't know, he is still out. John Ross, he is 95% available. He plays Seattle this week, and considering A.J. Green isn't playing, he's going to be starting. John Ross is a good guy to pick up this week if you're desperate at wide receiver. Now, another guy being 98% available is Willie Snead for Baltimore. Now, I'm not a huge Willie Snead fan. I'm not a huge Baltimore, Lamar Jackson. That whole offense makes me uncomfortable. However, he's the #1 wideout in that offense, and that right there is worth a consideration. If you are really desperate at wide receiver, throw him on your bench and see maybe some things can turn out. Maybe you can play him on the right weeks. For example, this week against Miami is not a bad matchup. Now, I say this because they went and picked up Brown. The Baltimore Ravens drafted this Brown. I believe he's actually Antonio Brown's cousin, but he's been just quite honestly a disappointment. I believe he had 1 target and was back on 2 punts in the last preseason game. He muffed both punts and dropped his target, and that's just awful. And so really, hands down, this guy is the #1 wide receiver in that offense. Now, there's a lot of hype on James Washington. James Washington is not a guy we're going to talk about in this video. Dante Moncrief is the guy we're going to talk about. If you have James Washington and a dead roster spot and a position that you want to fill, Dante Moncrief is probably a handcuff you want to go with. Now, we don't like to handcuff wide receivers. It's not a practice we do very often, but with the uncertainty of James Washington, Moncrief is a guy you certainly should probably have. Same thing goes in the exact same situation. The same idea is if you have Marquez Valdes-Scantling, he seems to be the starter, or excuse me, the #2 guy behind Devontae Adams, but the #2 guy in that Green Bay offense with Aaron Rodgers there throwing them the ball. That's a great offense to be in. He's got huge value, but you should handcuff him with Geronimo Allison. I think Valdes-Scantling is the starter over Allison, but you should have both just in case something happens, so that's something to consider. Again, we don't make a habit of picking up loads and loads of dead wide receiver spots, so there aren't a lot of guys that we want to talk about. We don't like to handcuff a lot of wide receivers, but those are 2 situations that you should consider. This is a very short video, guys. I know you're probably wondering why is this video so short and so brief. Most of you guys, you're not picking people up because you just had your draft, and most of you guys, you're not looking for starters because you're going to start the people you drafted to be your starters. But anyways, we want to do this anyway. So now we're going to move on. We're going to get to a couple of tight ends, although it's a really shallow position as far as talent goes. All right, so we're actually only going to talk about 2 tight ends. Like I just said, this is a very shallow position, and there is not a lot for you to consider. If you're looking for a tight end this week, I wanted to put at least 1 tight end out there for you to consider to start this week, just in case you need to pick one up and put one in. That'd be Darren Waller at 77% available. He plays Denver this week. Denver is a good defense, but they are less good, if that's even a word, against tight ends. And you can tell that offense is not great. It's a little bit shaky. They're definitely going to be looking to their safe option. Derek Carr is, and Darren Waller, who shows some potential. The guy really, and I wasn't even going to talk about any tight ends, but I felt like I should talk about one. And the guy I really wanted to talk about was Chris Herndon. Now, Chris Herndon is suspended for 4 games, and he is 84% available, but you need to keep your eye on this guy and be ready to pick him up when he comes back. If you didn't get one of those top 5 or 6 tight ends, this is a guy you should be ready to pick up and start. He's very talented. His quarterback, Sam Darnold, got better at the end of last season. Chris Herndon, as he got better, so did Chris Herndon. Those guys really developed side by side. I think this is a great situation. One of those situations where people are going to steer clear because of the suspension. But if you're ready to pick him up off the waiver wire in a week or two, Chris Herndon is going to be a great tight end for you. But again, just have some patience. Why am I talking about him now if you shouldn't pick him up this week? It's just to get him on your radar. And that's, again, just that list of players that you're targeting, that you're watching, and you're keeping an eye on. Chris Herndon is absolutely one of them. All right, guys, so here we are at kicker. Now, most of you guys waited till one of the last couple of rounds to draft your kicker, and you're going to be streaming all season long, and streaming your kicker probably starts right now. And so here are two kickers that you could consider to start this week. One is Matt Bryant. Now, he's 87% available, so that's really good news. You're very likely going to get him, and he plays in a very good offense. I absolutely love that. But what I like most about him this week is that he plays Minnesota. They're a very pass-heavy offense there in Atlanta, which is very well, but pass-heavy offenses or offenses that are better in the passing game than the running game typically stall out in the red zone. That's made more extreme by playing the Minnesota Vikings, who have a top 5 red zone defense in the NFL. Now that's perfect. An offense that can charge down there and get to the 30-yard line, 25-yard line, 20-yard line, and then stall out and kick a field goal. That's going to get you a lot of fantasy points. So I like Matt Bryant, who is a veteran kicker. This guy, you can trust him. He's not an amazing kicker, but he's far from bad. The other kicker that you should consider is 66% available Chargers kicker Michael Badgley. I think this guy is a solid kicker. He's in a very similar situation. If Melvin Gordon doesn't play, that running game takes a huge hit. And they're in a very similar offense to what I just talked about, where great passing game could stall out in the red zone if that running game is not set, which it probably will not be. They play the Indianapolis Colts, which I think also bodes well for them. With Andrew Luck gone, Jacoby Brissett playing quarterback, they're probably not going to score a lot of points. I imagine the Chargers are going to play it safe and conservative, let their defense win the game. They probably could kick a lot of field goals against the Colts and win it. So I think that Michael Badgley, who by the way is a good kicker, he's an accurate kicker, he's a solid, safe option at 66% available. I really like this guy as a guy that you should consider playing this week. But let's move on, because the other thing that people are often streaming, and you might be streaming this week, is defenses. So let's give you guys some options to consider. I believe I only have 2 of them to talk about, and then this video will be short. It'll be done and over with. Defense to pick up might be Denver's defense at 40% available. Denver plays the Raiders this week, who are a bad defense, and Denver is a good defense. I'm surprised they're 40% available. They're a defense you might be able to play every single week. And so that is definitely one of those defenses to consider picking up. They've got a lot of talent. And at 40% available, that shocks me. They are a top 12 defense. They should be owned in almost every league. The other one to consider is the Detroit Lions. Now, Detroit Lions are 97% available, and I would only start them this 1 week. I wouldn't start them the rest of the season. And this isn't a start-sit video, so you're probably wondering why I'm telling you this. The reason why I'm telling you might want to start them this week, because you need to know that to pick them up. And you're going to need to pick them up because they're almost 100% available. Almost no one owns them. The reason I like them this week, the reason you should consider picking them up and playing them, is they play the Cardinals, one of the worst offenses in the NFL. They play a rookie quarterback that's looked bad. They're playing with a rookie coach and an offense that doesn't look good. He looks very inexperienced. I think that they could absolutely capitalize on it and get some huge fantasy points this week. Well, guys, that's all I've got for you for this video. Here's just some names, some players, and some teams that you need to consider picking up this week off the waiver wire. Either it could be long-term value, keeper league dynasty value, maybe it's a handcuff, or maybe, again, like some of those defense kickers, maybe you're just picking them up to play them for this 1 week. Either way, those are some names that you should consider getting off of this waiver wire. As always, guys, these videos, we appreciate you watching them, supporting us. These videos in the future are going to be coming out a lot sooner, just so you know. We thank you so much for your support. You guys have a great day, and God bless.